I would probably say it's like evening from about 3 o'clock. Like, yeah. Like I think, yeah, like I don't, yeah, like, yeah. Like, I think it's like morning basically from 5 till 10, then afternoon from 10 onwards.
Okay.
Then it's just evening from 3.
And is that the way you kind of justify opening a bottle of wine or something at 3:30 because it's the evening? Is that
A-
what it's about?
Absolutely.
Speaking of, cheers!
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. Cheers. Yeah. Like I'm having a lovely beer.
Now,
Compliments of the spin-off.
yes, you are at the Spinoff. Yeah, it is the Spinoff, isn't it? I think it just gets
Yes.
colloquially referred to as at Spinoff, but at the Spinoff.
Yeah, which I am fine with, frankly.
And that's their studio. You can see in the background there. That's quite a nice little studio. So they, because Spinoff does podcasts and various bits of audio work as well, don't they?
Yes. So like I think we've got like maybe 5 or 6 regular podcasts, and then we've got like just like a few kind of one-offs here and there. But yeah. This is where that particular magic happens. I don't do podcasts, so I don't really spend much time in here at all. So yeah, this is a novelty for me.
Well, thank you. And you've already told me that you hate Zoom with a passion. So again, graciously thanking you for lowering your standards for coming and talking to us on Zoom today.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Yeah. Like, I tend to rank Zoom higher than Skype. Skype is truly one of the worst applications that has ever existed.
It is interesting how in the space of, I don't know, literal weeks, when COVID kicked in, all of a sudden there was this thing called Zoom. The whole world knew about it and the whole
Yeah.
world was using it.
Yeah, and it's insane how it like it's like it became this format that everyone was familiar with as a way of consuming content as well. Like it's like we just accepted the fact that we were seeing famous people in their rooms on Zoom for a good few months, and like I think we'll continue like to do so as this rages for the next however many months or years. And I aim to spend as little time watching things that have been recorded or made on Zoom as possible.
You're a critic for the Spinoff as well, don't you? Do you television and gaming? Is that because
Yes.
I was just thinking that you've just kind of answered my question before I was going to answer it, but the guy who plays that stupid little what's the name? The movie Frozen. My kids watch it, and he plays the little snow creature. Josh Gad, is it?
Josh Gad, who plays Olaf.
There you go.
I believe. Yes.
He did a very interesting series, I thought, using Zoom, where he got together a whole bunch of casts from favourite movies. So he did a Zoom, which was one Zoom rules them all. And I was wondering, from a critical eye, did you actually come across anything, even though we'll have it read that you hate Zoom, but did you come across anything in this new medium we're using as a critic and go, wow, that's a really interesting thing they've done?
I kind of tried to like avoid it because I had to have so many meetings on Zoom throughout that first lockdown, and I was just like, I don't want to be watching like a screen through a screen. So like I tried really hard to not engage with any Zoom content outside of a professional context. So like I was aware that like what's happening, and I feel like I might come and it's like I come like to like find some fun and value in it, but not in the near future.
Fair enough.
Like, and I also like I have a very bad habit on Zoom of just looking at myself, like I'm like staring into like a mirror. And that's not the point of Zoom.
Really.
Like, that's not the point of Zoom. It's meant to be a communication asset, not a very cheap mirror.
For people who don't know what I was talking about, this is the Josh Gad thing where we reunited all these various groups.
Yeah.
Like he did a Ferris Bueller one, a Ghostbusters one. That was when I was just saying one Zoom to rule them all. So he got all these groups back together, and it was kind of cool. It was kind of a cool use of the medium to actually make content. It was probably the cleverest one I saw, because other than that, it's basically just been used as a cheap roving camera. You don't have to have an outside studio anymore. You just have a laptop in your interviewee's room, and then they can be on whatever evening American show they want to be on. So yeah, but it was kind of cool. Your work at Spinoff, I'm interested as well. Has you listed as the cultural editor, and yes, I was wondering, could you explain that to me? And then I'd like to talk to you a bit about, maybe you could educate me on what is culture. So you're the editor, so you must be the expert.
Yes, in theory, yes. It kind of came from a quite convoluted series of roles I had here. So I started off in 2017 as the comedy man here. So like I wrote up the 2017 comedy festival, and I just kind of hung around as a kind of like permanent fixture, and I have just like subsumed sections. So like I ran the gaming section, then I also subsumed the TV section, and then when Henry Oliver, who now edits Metro, left at the start of last year, I subsumed music, and then it was just kind of like, okay, well, let's just not do TV, gaming, and music editor. Let's just do culture, and it also covers like arts, theatre, dance, stand-up, and all that stuff. So like I kind of write about all of that stuff and try to I kind of see my job as being like, talk about the stuff that our readers are watching, and also talk about stuff that our readers should be interacting with or want, or like I might not have heard of, but like would get value out of. And I feel like that's my job. And I'm slowly kind of stepping back into writing more and like editing less. So my goal is to kind of like curate what culture we cover at the Spinoff. And that's here, and also like around the world. Which makes it sound like a quite nebulous wide scope of work, but I feel like once you know who's reading your work, it's quite easy like to pinpoint what things they actually will read and will get value out of, and what things they are just like, I've never heard of this game, I've no interest in reading about it, I'm not a gamer, I'm blah blah blah. And so that's kind of what my job at the moment is just to speak the Spinoff's culture to them, and hopefully just introduce them to small things here and there. Like, here's this show that you might not have heard of. Here's this like theatre thing that you're kind of aware of, but might not have actually experienced, but now might get to. And it's also just like, I also just think that reading a good piece of critique is like helpful in itself, even if you can't engage with the game or the show or the play. I think reading a good, solidly written piece that makes you think a bit more about the form and I guess the context in which it sits is equally as valuable, even if you haven't seen it or like even have no intention of seeing it.
So you sound like what you're saying is you have found the culture of the Spinoff, and you're curating articles and information around that culture. It does make me think, though, you're mentioning lots of different forms of art. Do we think, stepping away from the Spinoff now thinking in society, is it art in its various form that is the way we define culture in society? Like when you say, what's that country's culture, is the easiest way to describe it, or the way to find what their culture is, to go to their artistic expressions, and that's what defines, or that's what identifies their culture?
I think art and food actually are probably equal, but I don't really write about food that much. As a separate person who was amazing at that job, and like I'm not a very highbrow person when it comes to food. I'm pretty basic. I'm a lot more refined when it comes to culture, sometimes at least. But yeah, no, yeah, it's like I think a society's culture is hugely defined by the kind of art it values and the kind of art it producers. It's like, and I think that one of my kind of like passions is like trying to kind of like is like trying to like interrogate the role of like, because like a lot of our art, and like we're actually quite lucky here in that a lot of our art is funded and supported it's like by like the government, and that's actually not that common around the world. And I think what CNZ values is a quite key way of like reflecting what the country values. And I don't think that CNZ necessarily always has it right, but I think that CNZ has it right more often than not. And I'm probably not in the majority of people who thinks that. I'm kind of, maybe I'm just moderate when it comes to arts funding.
Well, it's not just Creative New Zealand there, but you also look to NZ On Air, obviously, for you know, because there's another round of funding, and hugely. I think that makes sense in New Zealand, doesn't it? Because our population size, if everything had to be commercially successful, then there would be very few things in the public sphere when it comes to, let's say, widely appreciated art, meaning for art, whatever it is, music, written word, you know, video, whatever it is, to get to the largest group of people in New Zealand, it typically needs to be on some kind of mainstream platform. And to get onto a mainstream platform, you need to be somewhat commercially successful. And to be commercially successful, you need to make money. And in a small population, I think without that funding from Creative New Zealand, New Zealand On Air, and probably some other grants and trusts along the way, we would have a very small array of TV, music, you know, written art, you know, painting, theatre, any of that stuff. It would be microscopic, because you still have to put food on the table. So it's got to be able to, got to be able to find money somewhere. So it either needs to be grants or commercially successful. And we're lucky that the grants and what's given to the arts in New Zealand helps it be not need to be commercially successful, but still have the money to be on those sorts of platforms.
It's like, I think that currently our only fictional show that is not funded is Auckland Street, and it's like, I've got nothing against Shortland Street. Like Shortland Street. I employs a lot of incredibly talented people, but like, if every show had to be Shortland Street, I don't think the culture of our country would be in very good straits. Yeah,
and unfortunately, even following that through every show, we don't have a population or an audience big enough to allow every show to be Shortland Street. There'd be one or two, and the rest would just... And that's why I had this conversation the other day with a friend. I looked at the American, you know, population, 340 million. I'm pretty sure in saying it, I'll look up on Wikipedia in a moment. I'm pretty sure I'm saying the next biggest Western country is about 90 million. And I thought, gosh, what we see going on in America at the moment, it made me kind of think, is 350 million people too big for a Western country? In other words, when you see like I was shocked the other day to see Advanced New Zealand Party get 1% in the polls in New Zealand. And truly, and that represents about 25,000 New Zealanders. But in saying that, 25,000 New Zealanders is such a small number of people overall, it's unlikely to cause a huge problem in society. However, 1% of America would be 3.5 million people. And then you go, holy crap.
Most of our country.
Holy crap, that could make a difference. I remember when I used to work on ZB, proportionally per capita, I did overnight talkback and had a bigger show than Bill O'Reilly, who had the biggest show in cable news in America. So per capita, I had more listeners overnight than he had watching every day. And obviously there's no money in overnight radio, but, you know, he was worth tens of millions of dollars because of the population size they had for that 1% audience.
Yeah. And it's, it's like, and I also think of like just how small things that happen here are like legitimately headline news. And I think that I find it kind of like nice is not like other like world, but I find it quite calming that like things here don't really get that extreme. Like I like remember it was probably in May, like when those two women like left the hotel and went to
drove to Wellington.
Like that was headline news for like 3 days, and like that would not even be in a paper in the States because of what's happening there at the moment. Like, and here, like, it was like top of the 6 o'clock news. It was like everyone knew about these two women. And I just think that one of the many upsides of living here is kind of that smallness and like the fact that things can't get too crazy here. Like people like, people like those radical minor parties don't really get the footholds that they probably would in like the States, because there's just not the population for it to really build momentum. Like 25,000 people is probably sounds a lot bigger than it is. It's like a music festival.
That'll be a very weird music festival, that one. Don't know what that'd be playing.
Yeah.
Lots of Jesus music, probably, if you're asking me.
Suzanne Prentice headlining.
Well, I mean,
That's a deep cut. Sorry, that's a deep reference.
It ebbs and flows though as well. I mean, on one level that's great, but on the other level, we've been talking about the arts and funding, and it's not necessarily an equivalent. I mean, you know, YouTubers are YouTubers. They create their own art. My kids watch a guy called Mr. Beast, and I see him occasionally, and he had a T-shirt special on the other day where he promised to sign every T-shirt. He sold 68,000 T-shirts, and at $40 a pop, that's $3 million. That's one T-shirt this guy, and one run of T-shirts that this guy did, and that of course then funds everything he wants to do with his channel. In New Zealand, there's just not even proportionally, there's just none of that. That doesn't happen. So that swings and roundabouts, eh?
Yeah, and It's like, and like to relate to that, like I feel like people are so much more accessible now. Like, It's like the people who make content are so accessible, and I feel like that's triply true here because it is such a small country. Like, if you want to get in contact with someone, it's incredibly easy to find their Twitter, their Instagram handle, their email online. And I feel like, especially if you're working in the news or in the media, it's so much easier for your audience to kind of get in contact and like be like, I don't like this thing you did, or like you're dumb, or like a lot like worse than that. And I feel like in the next few years we'll like really begin to see the effects here, I think more so than in larger countries, of like how accessible this modern age makes us.
Yeah.
Like and like what impact that has on our content, and like on like other news we make, on the art that we make. Because I don't think it's definitely not altogether a bad thing, but I think there's absolute side effects of it. Like, I don't think an audience should have that much control over the art an artist makes, and especially like I don't think an audience should really hold as much sway over like other news and stuff as they can.
Well, yeah. Well, as soon as news sources, online, on TV, primarily digital sources, started citing a person tweeted, you just know that the world's going to end. I mean, I don't give a fuck what random person from Waitomatta's tweeting. If the person was an expert in the field and it was pertinent to the story, fair enough. But as soon as newspapers started quote tweeting random people, I'm just like, this is the world coming to an end.
Screenshots of tweets aren't news. I'm sorry, and they're not news, and they're not reporting. And I'm aware that in this modern age, at like a lot of like news outlets that like other need to churn out content constantly can outweigh the ability to like do deep, reasoned, slow, thoughtful reporting. And it's like, and I just think like, it's also an access thing. Like also like the like newsmakers, news outlets have so much access to their audience and what they read and what they don't read. And I feel like that's not necessarily a good thing.
They have to the news establishments, or even let's say the artists or the people on the receiving end of that criticism from the public, still have to buy into it. They still have to. I think we see a lot of people falling on. Like a good example is Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart, when he got stripped from doing the Oscars because of some things he said years ago, and years ago he apologized for those, and he basically had already made amends and said he knew that what he said was not appropriate, he knew it was wrong, he had apologized for it. He got stripped from doing the Oscars, and then he went on another apology tour, and like, cool, that's his decision to do. But I think when we also give power back to the nameless voices behind the eggs as well, we have some responsibility, and at the appropriate time, we can get pulled up by anyone, and we should back down, and we should apologize, and we should be humble. But there is a bit of a culture at the moment, perhaps, of an oversensitivity to that. You see it in politics.
Yeah,
you see it in politics where politicians are apologizing for something they said that was interpreted a certain way. They've done nothing wrong. Why would they apologise? I'm still interested. I haven't got to the bottom of it, about the Greens and their $11 million to this school that was a Green thing. I'm not sure they should have apologised for that. I have to say I haven't investigated it enough yet to actually pass informed comment. I'm still in the process of that, but it seems like they were giving money to a group who was trying a new sort of ecological, sustainable school. And they immediately just fell on their swords. Maybe it was appropriate, maybe it wasn't, but I guess what I'm saying is, for some in the public eye, there is a culture, I think, of, for want of a less aggressive sounding word, backing down too quickly. So we have a part to play in this when we get piled on as well.
Yeah. Well, It's like, I think the speed of social media also tears out any like nuance. Like, and it punishes people for sticking to their guns, or not necessarily, but it punishes people very quickly for doing something wrong, or like making a mistake, and they just pile on. And I feel like that doesn't help anyone. Like, even if someone has done a wrong thing, like the consistent pile on of someone who is sorry, or has like, I don't know, yes, sorry, yeah, I'm not phrasing this correctly. I think the social media cycle rewards people who have the hottest and the quickest takes, and it's a race to have the hottest and the quickest take on someone who's fucked up, basically. And it's very hard to kind of stop that once it gets started.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think also then when that newspaper, as you say, screenshots a tweet, they have to get a story out within 3 hours, so they screenshot a tweet that came out half an hour after the event, or the whatever it was, and no one's had time to think through the nuance of it and find out the truth. So then the story perpetuates that early idea, which is reactionary rather than thoughtful, and then it keeps going.
Yes, and yeah. It's like, and I feel like culture, like on the whole, is actually fairly forgiving, but social media kind of cuts out the like. Oh well, Like it makes things black and white because that's a lot simpler. Like you like something, you reply to something, or you retweet something, or you scroll past. There's no measured engagement. It's one of those four things, or it's or There's actually little room for like measured conversation in the realms of social media, where people can argue in a respectful way, and just be like, I don't think all right, but you're welcome to think that. It's like I'm wrong every day. I'm wrong every day. I don't love it, but I accept it. It's like I'm wrong about random things every day. I'm fine if someone goes, hey, that's a wrong thing you said. It's like, oh shit, was it? Sorry. I will try and I will be less wrong in the future. And that's just kind of how I live my life, is just trying to be a bit less wrong every day.
But I think the word that I like that you've used is the idea of nuance. I remember watching a clip, when Portland was kind of shut down and people took over and various bits and bobs. There was a protest going through. It may have been, I don't want to say it was Antifa, because that has connotations to it for some people, but it was definitely kind of progressive left-wing protest going through. And there was an elderly couple there just standing still holding an American flag. And the amount of abuse they had hurled at them, and the words they had hurled at them, like you're a racist, you're a Nazi. And the thing that I thought was, we don't know if this elderly couple are racist. They might be. But holding an American flag is not the metric to decide that.
No.
You need to have the nuance in there as well. That they might have been they might have been leaders of the Ku Klux Klan, who knows? But you don't know that just because they're holding a flag. Funnily enough, someone sent me a link just the other day, something I did with Professor Robert Patman, who's a professor of politics here in Dunedin. And it got the clip got put up on the ODT, and someone sent me a link to some arguments that had come below it. And one of the arguments was the person saying, these hard left commentators. And that was interesting, because the person who was arguing with him said, what have you seen in this clip that gets you to identify them as hard left? And the person said, Brittenden said that Trump's not very shrewd. And I thought about that, and I just went, well, I might be hard left, right? Like I might be. These people don't know. But again, that's not the metric. When people like Mitt Romney and, McCain and what's his name, the husband of Conway, they all think he's not very shrewd, and they're certainly not hard left. And what their people are saying is, I'm demonizing you because you don't agree with me. I'm going to label you the worst thing I can think of. And for this person, the worst thing they could think of was hard left. That was the worst thing. And again, it's just, ask me if I'm hard left. Check out who I vote for. I don't know if you can do that. But yeah, saying that Trump's not shrewd is not a metric for deciding whether I am or aren't.
No, yeah. It's like, and I try and say this as much as I can, but I don't think that critiquing something is the same as canceling it. It's like, I think that people, art, things can withstand criticism without that being you're trying it's like it's like to cancel me. It's like, no, but I think that our modern society just, again, it removes that kind of nuance that you can critique something without just being like, I hate this and everything it's about. Yeah, because that's not what people do or are. Like, I don't think that like that saying that it's like, I don't like this one thing about you is the same as being like, I hate literally everything that you stand for and I never want to hear you again. Like, there's nuances to friendships, to relationships, to like art that grow over time, that if they're strong enough can withstand critique. Like,
yeah, and
like I think that
right.
relates.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, but that idea of nuance, I think, is going very quickly. We see it on Facebook as well, and also critical thinking. Critical thinking and nuance need to go hand in hand, and we're losing both of them. People who repost stuff that is that a literal 30-second Google search can show that it's false, but they just don't. No more critical thinking. This agrees with my narrative. This helps my tribe, so I'm putting it out there. No critical thinking whatsoever. It drives me wild.
Like, I don't even look at Facebook now. I think I stopped after March 15, because I think that like people were just posting, not even like hot takes, just unverified news constantly. And it's like, and I was just like, I've got like, it's like me looking at this endless feed of unverified news is not helping me. It's not helping like the people who are posting it. It's of no benefit to either of us. So I was just like, I'm just not gonna engage with it. And I've never regretted just not looking at Facebook. Yeah. Like, I might like miss like a nice photo every now and then, but I'm just like, yeah. It's like literally endless amounts of nice photos online. I'll survive.
It sounds like as well it's a net negative to you. Like, it's not even a net neutral or a net positive. It's actually the one good versus the 100 negative makes it a net negative. So yeah, absolutely, might as well get rid of it. Hey, I wanted to ask you about your writing. You are a playwright as well. And
yes.
one of the things I find really interesting as I bring up your Wikipedia page for people who are watching, it's actually just not even to get into the details necessarily of your Wikipedia page, but there's 24 plays there. Now, there's a lot of plays there for someone. Although our guest yesterday wanted to share a message with you about not being young. In fact, maybe I can play that for you now. Hang on, I got to change across to another computer and go on this computer. And so I got a message for you from Jordan Hamill. Jordan wanted to ask you a question in this as well. Make sure all my volumes are up. Here we go. Here's a question for you from Jordan.
Can you ask Sam for me how he managed to get into the Young Writers Festival when he's in fact not young?
So that's basically the question he wanted. But obviously, compared to most of us who have a bit of grey hair, you're a very young man. And 20 to 30 plays in your short lifespan, that's amazing. Tell me about your writing process. Tell me about how that all works.
So I write quite quickly, and I
obviously
always have. It's just not a helpful answer. I think honestly, like, one of the reasons why I've always written quite quickly is that I've got a very good. I'm very practiced at turning the thoughts in my brain into structured sentences and thoughts, because I have a speech thing, so that means that the things I say need to be quite careful and need to be kind of quite like it's like what I say needs to be important because it's not necessarily easy all the time to say it. And I think that just translates to being able to write quite quickly and write structured thoughts. I had the luck of, well, not luck, but like I was quite successful quite early on and was kind of able to sustain myself barely, but with just playwriting. Yeah. It's like the first proper, It's like the first proper job I had is here at, is here. And that was when I was 26. I went straight from uni into just writing kind of full time from 21 onwards. And I guess that really, if that's the only thing you have like to do, then that's the thing that you do. And I guess, and I just write what's on my mind. Sometimes I write for actors who I know. Sometimes I write for friends who are also actors I know. So, and like sometimes I just love a situation so much I just have to write a play or like write a script about it. Yeah, that's kind of my process. And I kind of took some time off because I just wasn't loving writing scripts, but I kind of have returned to it in the past few months and really enjoyed being able to write here at work and also head home and just write script again and realize that I'm quite good at it and I really love it.
So that was then, I guess, going to be my next obvious question, which was, you obviously got a full-time job now, and your full-time job involves you writing. How much has that impacted your, I mean, I'll use the word you haven't, kind of your first love or your first skill set or your first job of playwriting and that sort of thing?
It gives me less time and less focus to do that. But like I and like my first year here, I like was writing more than I've ever written at all. And I kind of mostly took, I just slowed down because I was like, I want to write stuff that's actually important to me now, not stuff that like, here's a cute thing for a friend, here's like just a fun situation I had in like my head. And and then I just kind of like, it's like I think it's made me a much better writer because I feel like everyone who especially writes script, should learn another writing craft just to make sure that all your muscles are like, all your like writing muscles are like used. And I think that script works a few of those incredibly well, but not others. Like I've definitely, from spending time here, and I've written across like a wide amount of sections. Like I've done food pieces, I've done pieces on society, I've done pieces on politics as well. I think that that's really just made me much more attuned to the voices of other people and how to kind of write voices that aren't necessarily my own. I'm very good at putting my voice into the mouths of characters. And I think since I've worked here, I've kind of learned the skill of being able to kind of alter my voice to provide an insight into someone else's reality. And I think, so like, and it's like, and I think something else I've also, like it's made me value my time a lot more. So like, if I'm taking time off from work for scripts, I like use that time incredibly productively and well. Whereas I think in the past, I had lots of time, so I could just F around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, write some script Thursday, have fun on Friday, have fun on Saturday, write some script Sunday. And like, that was fine. And like, now I'm just like, no, I like work on a Monday, head home, make some food, write script for like 3 hours. And Like, I think that, and I think just through aging, as I am now apparently as old as the dust, has like really made me value my time a lot more and how I can spend that.
You sound like the embodiment of that idea that if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Now that now that you're busier, you've got more of a focus and you value that time more, so it's a more focused time.
Yes. Oh, well, yeah. It's like, I think I'm lucky that I wrote a lot when I wasn't employed, because it gives, well, like, like, and I've had shows on, I think I've had maybe like at least 2 shows on every year for the past 2 or 3 years. And I wrote all those scripts years ago. So like, I think that writing a lot in the past just makes, like, it gives the illusion that I'm kind of constantly writing now. And I don't think that, and that's not the case at all.
So of those couple of dozen plays that we brought up before, I mean, are you saying the bulk of them were done sort of pre-25? Is that what you're saying? But because there's such a vast amount of them, it gives the appearance that you're constantly working, because you must be, to have this much content out there.
Yes, I'd say like the bulk of the work that's out there was written pre-25, and like a show of mine that is picked up often in like universities and high schools is something I wrote when I was 19, and
wow.
If I could, I would not let people do that show anymore. It's like it's an experience that I can't quite put into words, but the process of seeing actors kind of embody a thing that is basically like a very, like, it's kind of like a hilariously personal thing that I lived like in 2009, 8, 9 roughly. Like 10 years later is it's a lot to process, and it's very funny. It's like it's like, it's something that no human would ever normally experience, and I feel both very unfortunate but lucky that I get to do that. But like if I could, I would not let people
I'm interested,
have that play on anymore.
I'm interested in that. I mean, how much control do you have? I interviewed Richard O'Brien once, Rocky Horror Show, and he has, I mean, obviously that's at a different sort of echelon to a lot of people who are writing now, but he has a hard and fast rule that you will not perform this show unless you're a professional troupe. So basically, you don't see high schools doing it, you don't see, Amdrams doing it. It has to be a professional theatre troupe before he will authorise them doing the Rocky Horror Show. How much control do you have over your plays? I mean, you say you'd like to stop people from doing it. Surely they must get clearance or permission from you first before they do it.
Oh yes. No. I mean, it's like frankly, like, I'm financially fortunate that people still want to do that. Like, it's more that I'm just like, I'm happy if they have it on. I do not want to see it. I do not ever want to see it again. But I will happily take the cash for like a thing I wrote for free 11 years ago. I'm very happy. I'm real happy for that.
So it sounds like you're saying it sounds like you're saying you kind of cringe a bit more, but it's fine if they want to do it. Yeah.
It's like, I don't think I've ever turned down somebody doing a show of mine. I'm not that fussy about what I write. I mean, it's like, I write roughly, like, I think last year I wrote something like 180 pieces at work last year.
Wow.
I write enough that I can't, that it would be an incredible emotional weight if I was fussy about anything I wrote. So like, and if someone else still sees something that's worth it in that work, I don't think it's for like me, like, to go like, why? What do you see in this? I don't see anything. It's like, I'm very, very happy to see people who like put on shows of mine still, but like, I don't need to literally see them.
That's
Yeah.
actually interesting. You know, there's that classic question, what is art? But there's also alongside that, there's that question is, what do you appreciate about it? What I hear you saying is, even something that you've written, other people may appreciate it in a different way when you maybe don't appreciate it maybe as much as they do in this 11 years later. That's a really interesting dynamic to think through.
Yeah, I think like the most successful thing I've written is it's like I'm a play called Burn Her, and I wrote that show in about 3 weeks. I wrote it in 2016, and it kind of predicted a lot of things that happened afterwards. Like it predicted like E2, and I predicted like a lot of things that would happen like a few years afterwards. And I wrote it because I was like, I want to write like a mainstream hit. I want to write a show that like isn't about sad people in love. Yeah. That's my favorite stuff. It's just writing about sad people who are falling in and out of love, and like that's great and everything. Yeah, but it's not the mainstream stuff that people fork out for. And I kind of wrote it not entirely skeptically, but like people went nuts over that show in a way that I hadn't experienced up until that point and haven't experienced since. And it's not that I don't understand what people see in it. I can scientifically kind of look at it and go, oh yes, like I know that this is a very good play that I just kind of wandered into accidentally. But like I've always gone like, but I don't think it's my best work though. It's just, yeah. Like, I just think I got very lucky, and that I'm quite good at the kind of writing that political thrillers need. And also
Right.
people like, I think at the time were just like starving for that kind of content, like starving for like a good meaty political thriller, which I say in massive finger quotes. I don't think it's that at all, but apparently sells the tickets.
Well, I mean, I as you're talking, I think about musicians, and there are a lot of musicians out there as well who make incredible art, and it's got a maybe smaller audience, and it's what they do and what they're passionate about. And then once in a while, they'll throw out the more commercially available music, or something that's a bit more poppy to their normal style, and that perhaps pays their bills for the next wee while. They still love it. They haven't sold their souls. They've just done something different, and then they keep on doing what they primarily love, forevermore after that. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. It's like, yeah. It's like, and I'm also like, I know that it's weird to say that about like a show that's like a feminist show that's about politics, that like was speaking like to some quite powerful is not like, but some like prescient truths at the time, and having that as my sellout show is a blessing, not a curse.
Yeah.
But I like look back on it as like something where I'm just like, I scientifically understand why people love this show. I don't love it as much as anyone else does. And I think I think it might be a little bit of just like spite, and just a bit of like, I've done other weirder shit that I think is much more fun, but who can say? I don't know. Like I don't. It's like, as a critic as well, I don't think that artists are always the best person to speak about their art, and I fall into that. And that I think that other people are a lot more qualified and to speak about my work than I am. I'm too close to it.
Yeah. Hey, well, look, you've got something on tonight, and I was going to ask, is that a performance you're doing? I mean, do you stay behind the
No.
do you stay behind the pen, or do you ever get in front of it? But we want to wrap up to give you plenty of time to get there.
I don't perform like I've done solo-ish shows, but it's always just as myself, and it was mostly just because I was like, no one's saying that I can't or that I shouldn't. And I think for like a few years I was really kind of keen to get it, well, just to like I have a noticeable speech thing and I think that normalizing hearing people who don't talk like everyone else is just quite important. And I was on a big soapbox about that for like a while, and like I still am. Yeah. It's like why I always just say yes to most speaking things is because I think it's important, like, to hear someone who isn't entirely fluent but still has things worth saying. Hopefully I've got things worth saying and worth hearing, but who can say? But I am not an actor of any kind. I have no singing talent. I can learn choreography if pushed, but prefer to just let other people do that for me.
Right.
Yes. Tonight I am simply seeing a friend to a gig. I am not in that gig. Yeah. I may have misled you. My activeness in that gig is more have a gig as in have a gig in the calendar, not.
I am grateful that you've come to talk to us. If people want
to find a delightful time.
If people want to find out more about you and your writing, obviously they can find you at Spinoff. If they want to visit or see or know more about you, is there anywhere else they can go online in this digital age we live in?
I am on Twitter at and my handle it's such an old school word, handle.
Yeah.
My Twitter is at s Brooks, spelled BROOKEBROOKS. And that's and I'm also in the Young Writers Festival, which is I'm doing an event where I talk about navigating the modern media landscape.
Well, there you go. That's what we're doing today, isn't it? We're navigating this modern media.
Exactly, and I think that's free. I've planned something. I'll mostly just to be talking about what it's like to be in the media in the modern age and how it's changed audiences as much as it's changed the people who are making the stuff that you watch and read.
Yeah. Excellent.
And I'll hopefully have something smart to say about it.
And then you'll do a critique of yourself and write about it. You'll be your own critic.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Navel gazing.
Hey, Sam, thanks for joining us, mate. It's been an absolute blast. Have great fun at the Young Writers Festival. And thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thanks heaps, man.